So I want to thank all of you for taking the time, trouble, and effort to come downtown Bethesda on the fourth weekend in August when everybody else in the DMV is either in the mountains or at the beach. So thank you very much for coming. I'm especially pleased to see people from my prior lives, my current lives, people from my dialogue group that I've been with for over 20 years, people from many people here from Collington, the continuing care retirement community that I live in now, who schlepped all the way from Prince George's County around the Beltway to here, and here they are. And friends from American University, who I worked with for many years, who are here as well. And I'd like to just thank friends, people who saw the invitation and decided to come. I'm really grateful. And finally, I'd like to thank Judith Harris, who's here, right there in the back, who led the first poetry workshop I attended. Now, Judith is the author of 3 books of poetry and 2 books on poetry and psychoanalysis, and has been published in every magazine worth its name. And I knew all of that before I stepped into her class. And I was terrified. I was terrified. And Judith certainly didn't know it, but she could have easily ended my thought, any thought that I might have had about writing poetry or continuing to write poetry. But Judith was nothing but encouraging, wrote me long, supportive notes in between the sessions to say, do this, do that, this is great. Taught me the importance of craft and gave me the courage and confidence to continue writing. So thank you, Judith. So, as I mentioned in the invitation, I'm hopeful today that we can create a community to birth what lives in me and to support its growth after today. And I know that communities do not get started without conversation, so I'd appreciate it if you would turn to your left, to your right, or around, or in front, and select a person to talk to. And I'd like you briefly to say your name and why you chose to come here today. When you had all of the other choices in the world, you chose to come here. So if you would do that just for a couple of minutes. Thank you for deciding to share that information. Poetry came to me very late in life. The most recent poem I'd read before the first poem I wrote in August of 2018 was in 1960, a couple of weeks ago when I was a junior in high school. And it wasn't as though I didn't like poetry. I mean, I just didn't have any interest in poetry. I was doing other things. So as I was inspired to start writing poetry after listening to a Terry Gross Fresh Air interview. I'm driving the car aimlessly on the Beltway, and there she is, right, talking to me. She didn't know she was talking to me, but she was talking to me. And what she was talking about was the death of Donald Hall, who was a poet laureate. And she did an episode where she strung together 3 episodes where she had interviewed him over a period of 20 years. And so I didn't know Donald Hall from anybody. And so I'm listening to him speak and read, and then near the end of the interview, he starts talking about his wife, Jane Kenyon, who was 20 years his junior. And he started talking about the fact that they had discussed death, but only his death and not her death. so her death was devastating to him. And he wrote 2 collections shortly after she died. And he was reading from these poems about his incredible grief and loss. And I thought, audaciously, I wonder if I could write a poem that had the same kind of an impact on a reader as his had on me. So I started to write, took several classes, and started to think writing poetry might be a perfect way to spend my time after retiring from AU. And in one of these classes, a poetry leader complimented me on a poem, and I said, "Thank you very much." And then I said, "Well, you know, I really don't have the courage to say I am a poet." Yeah. And so he said, "All right, here's your assignment. Go home and write. I'm not good enough to be a poet. And keep writing it." And I said, "It like the 3rd grade?" He said, "Yeah, like the 3rd grade." So I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. My hand cramped, and he told me, "Your hand's going to cramp, but keep writing." And then I started to feel the pain and of my father. The pain of feeling I'm a failure and remembering my dad was the origin of that feeling. So What Lives in Me traces how my dad's judgment that failure was unacceptable, real men don't cry, and I was not good enough was delivered through words, expectation, and at times physical force. Now the judgment echoed across my lifetime. What Lives in Me explores masculinity, vulnerability, blue-collar life, survival, and success. The poems attempt to give language that often remains unarticulated by men. At its core, What Lives in Me is about what we inherit emotionally and what it takes to name it, develop the courage to feel it, and then live with it. So I want to start today with Fear of Failure is Born. It's the first poem in the collection, and it's one of my first recollections about my dad, and it is where my journey began. Failure, I knew you before I could spell you. At 3 years, I toddled toward Dad, held up my arms. He bent down, a grizzly, sniffing my morning diapers, clawed them down, smack, my bottom. You should have held it. At 4 years, I waited at the breakfast table for a goodbye kiss, Crayolaing my coloring book outside the lines. He leaned close, bare breath in my face, growled. His hairy arm rose smack to the back of my head. My forehead hit the table. Failure tattooed on my brain. I cried. He snarled. Quiet. Real men never cry. I protected my secret shame in a double-locked dark cellar door with pit bull ferocity. Now the arc of What Lives in Me is long. It includes childhood illness, difficult teenage years, factory work as a young adult, and the long process of learning to live, create, and be successful under the weight of that early judgment by my dad. Now, the cost of keeping and protecting that secret was large. For example, I kept an emotional distance that meant I had few intimate friendships. And since I didn't want to be discovered as a failure, I worked alone and did not ask for help. That choice meant lonely work, a risk of bad decisions, and a commitment to getting up earlier and going to bed later than my competitors. It also meant that my brain refused to acknowledge success. My brain refused to feel success or joy because my synapses were so tightly wired, I was a failure. When success did occur, it was lucky or ignored by my brain in the interest of preparing for the next problem to solve. Only failures got traction. I described what that felt like in a poem titled, Where's the Joy? Where's the joy? Even in my 30s, Dad hangs around my breakfast table, a phantom grizzly, waiting to whack my skull at the day's first failure. A miasma of fear fills the room. Breaths shallow, pain cinches my chest like tightened barrel staves. To ward off Dad's snarls, I begin my daily preparation protection dance as a union labor lawyer, working on Sally's arbitration case. She's a single mom with a boy 10 and a girl 7, fielding angry taxpayer questions by day, answering professors by night for 6 part-time night school years. Accounting degree valedictorian, promotion denied. A hearing scheduled. I developed plan A, backup plan B, and contingency plan C, all now tucked in my scabbard, ready for use. The arbitrator calls the hearing to order. Her boss arrives armored to intimidate. Harvard crimson silk tie, starched white shirt, dark blue Italian wool suit, thin-soled mirror-shined black shoes, to remind us he is smart, invincible to challenge, and licensed to bully. My heart races, blood pressure surges, neck hairs rise. The grizzly growls. My well-sharpened words slice through his armor, strip him bare. Naked now, ashamed, his mouth slackens, states the truth. Sally really is the best. Joy bursts from Sally. The grizzly retreats. But today's ritual dance buys no protection for tomorrow. At breakfast, the grizzly returns. No time to rest. So to the world, I was this hotshot lawyer who slayed dragons, but I didn't feel like a hotshot lawyer. Fear of discovery lives in me, points that out. Fear of discovery lives in me. I am a man with every hair intentionally placed, sprayed to Greek marble statue stability. A man who speaks in calm, persuasive paragraphs, receives audience oohs and ahs as I exit, parting the crowded room like a ship's prow. I am a boy whose ears still burn with Dad's predictions. You'll never get elected to anything. You're not smart enough, not savvy enough to graduate from law school, not good enough to make the money to buy a house on the east side. I'm a puffed up blowfish, extending poisonous spines of rage to protect my fear of failure from discovery. I do not have the courage to feel that fear in me. So when I When I was in college, Dad bet on himself, gave up a middle-class job as a journeyman machinist to pursue a career repairing microscopes in large hospitals. He had always wanted, as he said many times, to make more money, be his own boss. Why? So nobody could tell him what to do. He was immediately successful and his business grew. He started hiring employees, and most importantly, he started buying a new car every other year. I moved to DC from Ann Arbor, where I grew up, and he remained in Ann Arbor. I didn't see him very often. And when we were with each other, he remained sarcastic and I kept my distance. I finally screwed up my courage and started asking him to talk with me about what it was like for me when I was a kid. And he finally agreed. Reconciliation Road describes that results. Reconciliation Road. After years of talking at a polite distance, I asked Dad to talk about when I was a kid. He agreed to start down the Reconciliation Road. I expected to receive the apology that I had rehearsed accepting. My IED was packed with explosive shrapnel, bullying, belt slashes, kneecapping put-downs. His return blast: "You deserve nothing. You rejected my offer to be my VP with a financial security I never had." He didn't hear me again. He never will. Afterward, I drove and drove until a green-treed riverbank beckoned. I slipped beneath the cool, slow-moving river, looked up at the sunlight slanting through the river's surface. I closed my eyes, relaxed my legs, let my arms droop, drifted toward the promised transition light between here and gone. Almost there. I heard his pain-filled voice for the first time. My heart cracked. My legs kicked to the surface. I wanted another chance to walk the Reconciliation Road before his end. So we had that experience, and shortly after that experience, not so long, we were together at a University of Michigan football game, tailgating. Those tailgating times, a little bit too much alcohol, maybe a little bit too much testosterone. So the title of the poem is "The Closed Door." Amid relatives and friends at a crowded Michigan testosterone-filled football tailgate, my father shouted, "My son sued President Reagan and won. I'm proud of him." My head snapped round. My dad said, "That?" Words never heard, an unexpected crack in his door, silencing "Attaboy, congratulations." "Look at me, look at me." You say it to them and not to me. I scrambled and scrabbled to reach your bar, always longing for a word of praise, settling for a wink, a nod, the curl of a beginning smile. I snarled, "No more crumbs, Dad. I'm done trying to prove myself to you." "I'm sorry," he said. "It's what my dad taught me, to keep your head from getting big. It's what I knew. I'm proud of you." So Not so long after that, I got an envelope in the mail. The title of the poem is The Gift. An envelope arrived with a handwritten return address, Dad, in uneven block print, not stiff enough for Polaroids of bass or lake trout or northern pike, proof of fishing prowess. Dyslexia usually drove him to the telephone. I tore it open. A generous check and a folded note in his own hand. Pay your credit card debt. A gift from your dad. Again, the "you're not good enough to manage yourself" refrain. I wrote, "It's none of your business." Returned the check crumpled. A week later, another envelope with the same handwritten return address. Inside the check, smoothed, a new note. "This is a gift because you are my son." We were on track. Really on track for that long-sought reconciliation, but it was sharply interrupted. The title of the poem is Interruption. November 1, 1983. Dad's large-knuckled arthritic fingers became too stiff, too painful for the fine motor flexibility needed to repair microscopes. He retired early, left the company he created, carrying the helpless anger of a master performer who breaks a leg and never takes the stage again. Once a high school swimming champion, he began his now empty days with dawn trips to the YMCA 7 days a week as soon as the doors opened at 7 a.m. Anger fueled every muscle fiber. He swam lap after determined lap, each week faster than the last. In a surprise call, he confided pleasure that his arms and legs once again propelled him like the porpoise he had been. On All Saints' Day, he stood in the shallow end, relaxed from exhaustion. His knees buckled. He slipped noiselessly under the water. His heart stopped just as he started to share its warmth with me. After he died, I realized that fear of failure still possessed me. It didn't go away because he died. Some days I was angry that he died just when we were getting started. And some days I imagined what it might be like if we had more time before he died. I tried to capture that in the poem titled, Which Layer Dominates Today? Old, crusted wounds that ooze ruby red and live in my dark cellar where cockroaches feed on shame and pain, or deep white wound scars rubbed smooth like a worn quarter by time, blurred facts, forgotten faces, forgiveness. To finish my work, I had to confront my belief, long buried, that I feared Dad was correct, that I was a failure. The Reveal, which is the final poem in the collection, discusses that. The Reveal, February 22, 2022. I excavated long buried, calcified memories hardened in my brain's mud silt like dinosaur bones. Some just below the surface came easily, scrubbed clean and named. Others emerged in a bright, rich vein of light that lives in me after a pickaxe search in a long, dark tunnel. I stood behind the curtain, felt the failure seeked I'd hidden for a lifetime. Tears scabbed over the wound of childhood pain. I am a poet. Open the curtain for all to see. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you being here to bear witness to that reconciliation and what it produced. Damn it, I am a poet. So, questions, comments? Yeah. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Volume 2. Nan? Nan, you came in a little late, but I'll say I started writing poetry. My first poem actually was in August of 2018 after I took my kids and grandkids on a whitewater rafting trip on the Green River in Utah. And that was after the Terry Gross interview that I mentioned before. And I had this, so I took the notebook and I got up early. And anybody who's been whitewater rafting, I'm sitting here. The sun is rising behind me, and I'm looking at a cliff that's over 1,000 feet tall, 38 sedimentary layers. So the sun is coming up, so it's going down across there, and I'm sitting and writing about my feral children. I said children, grandchildren. And what had happened was when we got into the camp, there were 10 kids, all about the same age, 10 to about 13. And they ran around the campsite. They jumped off the rocks into the water, and they behaved like kids without boundaries. It was so wonderful to see. And, you know, they invented things like hide and seek, like, you know, they were the first who'd ever invented a game like that. So that was my first poem then. Yeah. Yeah, I was changed pretty dramatically. I'm no longer burdened.
No longer what?
I'm no longer burdened. Yeah, Judith. The question was, did I ever ask my dad to tell me about his childhood? No, I didn't, Judith. I didn't have time, but I saw his father, my grandfather. We didn't spend much time. He was partially estranged from his father, but his father even later carried a dowel, a stick, about a 1/4-inch dowel. He was a farmer, milked cows. So he used it to get the cows in place, but he also used it to whack kids. And he grew up in a family that was in where he was often hungry during the Depression. And he had a mom who often took the milk check and went off to the city for weekend and spent the money and then came back on Monday or Tuesday. So he had a pretty tough childhood. Yeah. That's what I would say. This is a collection of poems that came about with a lot of hard work and a lot of self-discovery that I hadn't done before. Natalie came in late, but Natalie, for any of you who have read my Substack, she is Ms. Substack for me. Thank you, Natalie. Well, I started doing it, Natalie, near the end by sharing poems that I had written with the class and asking them to comment. They were my poems about me to stimulate discussion in the class. So I'd use a lot more of them. Well, I would say my imperfections were magnified. I had work to do with my kids. No question. I think it probably can be. I think it probably can be. And for me, it certainly, as I suggest, became an unburdening that would never have occurred but for writing this book.
So you might recommend that as a maybe.
No, I recommend buying 10 of these books. That's what I recommend. Yeah, Dorothy. So what would you describe as the positive things, just out of curiosity? Well, I learned how to be angry. I learned how to be angry, and I had a job where anger was high reward. You know, I did a lot of angry stuff. Man, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Not in today's, I mean, federal sector unions are on the ropes. There is no room for collaboration. I enjoyed a period of incredible collaboration, labor management collaboration. The woman sitting right in front of you experienced it as well. And it can't happen today. So it would drive me crazy. I couldn't even point toward it. I couldn't plan for it. I couldn't build for it. I couldn't do it. Gee, I did not experience that. I didn't, I just wrote. I just wrote. And when, you know, when you're a beginning writer and other writers look at your stuff and they're supportive, they don't criticize you. They just say, Bob, keep writing. Just keep writing. Just keep writing. It'll get better, you know? And keep writing. So I didn't experience that. Isaac. You know, Isaac, ever less frequently, and now not at all. Great question. All right. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it very, very much. But before you go, I would like you to think about